Hey friend, I hope you are enjoying the last week or two of broadcasts here on the Bible Tract Echoes radio program as much as I am. You see, we've been hearing the story, an adoption story, from one of our staff members, one of our teammates here at Bible Tracts Inc., Austin Marriott, operations manager, lead designer, my brother-in-law, uncle to my children, youth pastor, many hats, many talents, but one thing he does have is an understanding that God has placed him where he is. And I hope you have an understanding of that as well. Sometimes I feel like we can get so caught up in ourselves. We can become so quote unquote, or we think we're so self-sufficient. We know that no man is an island unto himself, but in reality, we would be lost, hopeless, drifting without God. And if you really kind of internalized, if you really had an understanding of how much God has done for, with, and through you, it would shock you to your core. And today we get to pick up in the story of Austin and his story and really dive deep as we approach the end of the story and really understanding God's grace. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Brother Austin, but I'm going to ask you if you would you tune your ears? Would you tune your heart to what you will hear today?
All right. Well, thank you again so much for tuning in. And if you've been with us for the last 9 episodes or so, I appreciate you sticking with it and getting to the, the conclusion of this chapter, because it's not all finished yet, but we have very much, I've been excited to be able to share this story with you and just brag on God through this story. So we ended up yesterday talking about my grandfather had come, him and his wife, my grandmother, to meet us in Illinois and sharing all the gifts that they would give us, and him telling his story and getting to, as he was really wrestling with God over the situation, not being able to adopt me, not being able to have any kind of relationship, and beginning to pray every time he found a dime. And then him handing a check to me that represented the over 12,000 prayers that he prayed throughout my life. He told me that there came a time that he had to give it to the Lord, that he discontinued that. But as I did the math in my head as he was handing me that check, those prayers represented at least one prayer every single day of my life up until that point. It was overwhelming. I really don't even know what word to use to describe the emotion that was going through my heart. That God loved me that much, that he'd impress upon a man that I've never met to pray so consistently for me. It was just amazing. It just really was incredible. That first meeting was one I will never forget. It was absolutely just wonderful. Here at the church, our pastor, my father-in-law, asked me to preach that Sunday that they were here. He had my grandfather share the story of the dimes. I never in a million years dreamt that I would share the platform with my paternal grandfather, that I would have the opportunity to serve along his side. Is just incredible. That Sunday afternoon, we were sitting down having lunch, and he was telling stories, and we were talking about different things, and he was talking about, if you remember, I shared how my son's name is Lemuel, and his grandfather's name, he was a Bible-believing Baptist preacher, and his name was Lemuel. He was sharing some stories about this man, his grandfather Lemuel, and he said we would sit on the wooden pews in the old single-room church house back in the day and listen to him preach so fervently. People would come from all around and really take a whole day back then, take their horses and buggies and come up and sit and listen for the day and spend the whole day together for church. He was telling the story, and he said Grandpa Lemuel and his wife Pauline, and they were doing that. And I said, hold on. I said, wait, back it up. I said, tell me the names again. He said, well, it was Grandpa Lemuel and his wife Pauline. And I said, Papa, Lem's first name is obviously Lemuel. But have I ever told you what his middle name is? Papa looked at me. No. He said his middle name is Paul. Lemuel Paul. His middle name comes from my middle name, Austin Paul. But without even knowing it, and again, you can be sitting there in your car and say, oh, that's just coincidence. I don't believe it in the least. I believe 100% that God orchestrated that. Again, not for me, not for my wife Rachel, for a praying preacher who was faithful in getting on his knees and praying for a little boy that he had no idea where he was. Did he grow up in Arkansas? Was he in Louisiana? He had no clue, but he prayed faithfully. And God blessed because of that and gave him just a little nugget of a blessing that his great-grandson, unbeknownst to me, unbeknownst to my wife, is named after his great-great-grandfather and his wife, Lemuel Paul. Absolutely amazing. Unbelievable. It was just a whole nother moment, like when we found out the correlation of Lemuel, just weeping and praising God and thanking God. And again, hearing the phrase, Austin, that's a God story. And it is. Because that's the only way you can explain it. You can't explain that away. That's God. So our time ended and they traveled back home to Tennessee. And as time has progressed, we've had the opportunity to go down there multiple times and meet many of my cousins, been able to meet aunts and uncles, been able to meet great aunts, great uncles. I had the privilege to meet my great grandmother. My children got to meet their great great grandmother. She passed away just a couple of years ago, but we had the opportunity to meet her and talk with her. That was an incredible experience. We still don't have any connection or communication with my father and his family. They still deny everything. But it's amazing how God has put these things together, how God has orchestrated and worked through. It has been an amazing experience. I've had the opportunity now to preach for my grandfather multiple times at the church that he interim pastors at. We've had the opportunity to serve together in multiple times of presenting Bible tracts at many different churches down in that region. Just this past trip that we took to Florida, we spent some time on our way there. We stopped overnight, and on the way back, we stopped for a couple days and got to spend time with them. During that trip, I got to go to the grounds of the camp where the girls' home was. I got to walk and talk with the camp director and see where my mom was during that time of her life. I got to see where the tabernacle was, where Dr. Lester Roloff came and preached over 3,000 people on those grounds. I got to see where the camp director who's now there, he showed me exactly the spot where he trusted Christ on those grounds. That my maternal grandfather, if you will, adopted, I guess you could say, where he served his Lord. It was a somber experience to be able to walk those grounds and see the buildings, see what God had done through those times. And then while we were there, I also got the opportunity to go and meet Grandpa Lemuel's children. We got to spend time with them, meeting them for the first time. I got to go to the ground where the church was that he had started. We got to sit into where the church had moved and built a building, but I got to sit in the facilities of the church that he started. I got to stand by his grave. I got to see a picture of Lemuel and Lemuel, they're together. It's amazing to me to see the hand of God work. You know, you've heard the verse, you probably have memorized it in Romans chapter 8, verse number 28. It says that all things work together for good, to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. And you know, it does not say in that verse that all things are good. It doesn't. We don't preach any kind of prosperity gospel. There are good days, there are mountain peak experiences, and there are deep, dark valleys. But all things do work together for good. And sometimes in our perspective, it's hard for us to see it. It's hard for us to understand it. But like I said at the beginning of telling this story, for some reason, God allowed me to see things from this story, from his perspective. And it's been incredible. And again, I believe with all my heart that my story is not unique. It's not special. It's special to me. It's extraordinary to me. And others that have heard it have said that's an incredible story. But I believe you have an incredible story. And you may not know it. You may not even experience it. You may not ever get to see it. But if you're saved and you go to heaven someday and you stand before your Lord and Savior, I believe with all my heart that you will see from his perspective how incredible your story truly is. I believe that with all my heart. God has a plan. He has a purpose. And I think tomorrow, as you tune back in, we're going to talk a little bit more about the application of this story. You've heard a lot of facts. You've heard a lot of information. But I encourage you, please tune back in tomorrow.
I truly implore you, please do, as was just recommended, tune in tomorrow. But I'm going to ask you to kind of ponder what you've heard and apply it to your own life. Before we even attempt to make application ourselves, you say, why are we listening to this on a program called Bible Tract Echoes? Let me tell you, friend, I've learned in my short life that until we have a true understanding of who we are, but more importantly, who God is, we'll never be able to reach a lost and dying world as effectively as we should until we have a clear picture of who God is. How can you tell others about him who you don't know yourself? Join us tomorrow. Have a great day for his glory. God bless.
Thank you for joining us today for Bible Tract Echoes, a ministry of Bible Tracts Incorporated. If you would like to receive a free sample packet of all of our tracts, you can contact us by calling 309-828-6888. That's 309-828-6888. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 188, Bloomington, Illinois, 61702. A faster way to contact us is to go to our website at BibleTractsInc.org. That's BibleTractsInc.org. There you will find more information about our ministry and details on how you can support Bible Tracts Incorporated. Thanks for listening, and may the Lord richly bless you as you serve Him.